Hey guys, welcome to another episode of How To. I'm Chris Walker with Crown Custom Cues, and I'm part of Cue Makers Guild. Please take the time to like and share and subscribe if you will. I've had a lot of people asking me how I do my clear coats, and specifically how I do my CA clear coat. And what I'd like to do is take the time today to briefly go over the process of doing the CA clear coat. Now, I'll be doing it on this conversion cue that I'm currently working on. There are there's a handful of materials that you're going to need, and I will try to walk you through the process as easy as I can. It's not that hard to do. It's just a matter of taking your time, doing it right, and if you do it right and the way I show you how to do it, you're going to have a good strong clear coat. Some people say CA clear coats they chip and they pop and they leave smoke under under the rings and stuff like that. And while yes, it can, but if you do it properly, it won't do that. And again, this is my method. This is how I like to do it. There are other ways to do it. Everything from an epoxy clear coat, an automotive finish, UV resin, down to the CA. I prefer the CA over all of them. One, it's a faster process. If done properly, you can have an immaculate clear coat with a very high gloss showroom shine. And again, it's my opinion that the CA clear coat will provide the highest gloss out there. Now, what I'll do is, again, we're going to do it on this conversion cue that I'm doing, but what I'll do is I will take a minute to flip the camera around, and I'll show you the products that we're going to use, and I'll explain them, and I'll post these products in the description down below, links, so you can get them yourself. So give me a minute to get the camera turned around, get it situated, and I'll go over the products that we're going to be using for this particular tutorial. So give me just a minute. Okay, now that I have the camera situated, the products that we're going to use, it's basically 3 different products. You want to have, and this is specific to me, I just over the years found that this makes it easier for me. You want to use Brawny paper towels, and they're called Terra Square. You can tear them off in squares, not whole sheets and half sheets. And you can purchase those in a lot of different places, Walmart, Food Lion, typical grocery store, stuff like that. So you want to have 10 squares of the Brawny's Terra Square. You want to have 1 square of the Brawny Terra Square, and this one is going to be used for the activator application. These will be used for the CA application. And then as far as the CA glue goes, I use a Starbond product. It's a medium, and I buy it in the 16-ounce bottles, and then I just convert it into the 2-ounce bottles as needed. I keep this in the refrigerator. It makes it last a lot longer. When you get these from Starbond, they're fresh. They make them weekly, but they'll last you a year at least, especially if you keep it in the refrigerator. And the next thing is you're going to want to use an activator. There are different kinds of activators out there. You have aerosol and you have spritz bottles. I do not like the aerosol kind. I find that it leaves crystals, pits in your clear coat. I prefer to use the liquid kind, and I buy that in the 8-ounce bottle, and I pour it over into the 1-ounce bottle. And this is a spritz version. It comes out very thin, and that's all you're going to need for this process as far as the application goes. Then of course, once you get into the sanding, you'll have the sandpaper and stuff like that, and I'll have a different video on the sanding process. This is just going to be a quick video, well, not that quick, but a detailed video on how to apply the CA finish. So let me get the camera situated once again, and we'll begin that process. Alright, here we are at the lathe. This is the setup that I use for doing my clear coats. You'll notice that it has good ventilation system in the back. You definitely want to keep that going at all times, because the CA glue is going to create a lot of toxic fumes. You do not want to be breathing that. It is very toxic. I have had eye infections and a lung infection from it before. It's not fun. Be safe, get good ventilation. Now, as I showed you earlier, the Terra squares and the CA and the accelerator. Now what I'll be doing is showing you how to apply it. The first thing that you want to do is take one of the 10 squares that you cut, and you want to fold it a certain way. Now again, this is a little Terra square from Brawny. Take it, fold it in half, and then fold it in half again like this, and then fold it 1/3, fold it 1/3, and you'll notice you got a little pad here to work with. When I'm applying it, I'll use these two fingers to stay underneath the whole time, and I apply it underneath the cue. What I mean by that is, when I have the CA going, I have it like this. I put the towel is under here. I'm using these two fingers to apply pressure. I'm not putting much pressure, just enough to spread the CA glue. And as I'm applying it, I keep the towel underneath the cue. I keep the CA glue ahead of the cue, of the paper towel. Notice that this is right over top of the paper towel. I keep the CA glue ahead of the paper towel. So as I'm going back and forth, I'm giving about a 1 inch to 2 inch stroke back and forth, fluid and even, and I'm giving constant pressure on the super glue at the same time, and you'll see this when I do it, all the way down the cue. I'm not pressing hard, just enough to float it around and move it. When I get to the end, I give it a little swipe off of there, and then I come back to the beginning. Now I like to start mine at the A joint area. Again, I'll start here in the dry, get it wet right here, and then slowly back and forth, come down to the joint collar, and then come over here right where it was and carry it back this way. And then I'll spray it with the activator, wipe it off, and then I'm ready to go ahead with another coat. Now this cue, it already has a logo put in, and I've already put 2 seal coats on it. After your 2 seal coats, it's ready for the actual clear coat. So let me get my exhaust turned on, and you'll be able to see me go through all 10 layers. Now I don't know if you'll be able to hear me very well because of the exhaust or not, and I will be dipping in and out of the camera, getting other paper towels to work with. But remember, it's 2 layers of sealer, then you put your logo in, and then 10 more layers of the CA. And you spray in the activator. This is pretty important. Once you get your first layer on of the clear, you spray your activator, you take your dry cloth, you rub that activator in, and at that point you're immediately ready for another layer. And it'll last up to 5 more coats before that starts to stick again. And so after about 4 to 5 coats, you're going to want to respray it, and then you'll finish off the remaining layers that you have, which should be 5 or 6. And once you get your last layer on, then you want to spray with activator one more time, wipe it down, and give it just a couple seconds to do its magic. And at that point, you're ready to start sanding. It is that fast. So give me just a minute to get this dust collection system going and to get the machine turned up a little bit. I like to have mine about right here. And now it's spinning at about 118, 120 RPM. Don't let this headstock fool you. The camera makes it look like it's going a lot faster than it really is. It's going about 118 to 120 RPM, and that's about where you want to be, because you don't want to be going too fast, because if you do, when you put this on, it's going to just throw it back in your face, and you don't want that. So let me get the dust collection on, and I will begin doing the process. Alright. Now, I don't know how well you can hear me, but again, I'm going to start in the middle, work my way this way, go back to the middle, and work my way that way. But pay attention to how I'm applying it with both my hand and the glue. This is the first layer. what you just put on there. Come all the way down one good time. Take your towel, fold it in half, and then rub that in. And what you're doing is you're rubbing in the accelerator. Once you get the accelerator rubbed in, you can continue your clear cut process. So again, fold it in half, 1/3, start in the middle, bring it right back. Ready for another one. Half, 1/3. Another one. Touch it to see if it's going to be okay to put another one. Now, if you can see, I don't know if you see it or not, but it does need to be sprayed one more time. So we'll go ahead and do that. Then we rub that in. And now you're ready for some more layers. At this point, I have 5 more layers to go. After this, we'll have 2 more coats. After this, we'll have the final coat. A little bit more activator. Rub that in. And let's get our final 2 coats on. that does that. Now, turn this air. Turn that off so you can hear me better. Now that is the final application of all 10 coats. Technically it's 12 coats because remember I put the first 2 seal coats on, then I did my logo, and then I came back and did the final 10 coats. So it's a total of 12 coats altogether. At this point you can spray it one more time just to get everything set. Once you get that sprayed, take your cloth again and wipe it down. And once all that evaporates, I mean, it's ready for sanding. It's that fast. What I'll do is I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'll come back either in this video or another one and show you the sanding process. Okay, now that we have the 10 to 12 layers of CA on the cue, remember we put in initially 2 seal coats, then I did the logo, and then I put 10 more coats on there to finish it out. When we begin sanding, we're going to use, I use 4 types of sandpaper. I'll start out with 320, then I'll go to 400, then I'll go to 600, and then I'll go to 1000, and then at that point I'll start with the rubbing compounds to get the polishes and the scratches and stuff out. Finally I'll put a wax on it. Now you'll notice that I jumped from 320 to 400 to 600 straight to 1000. There's no 800 in there. I have found that the 800 really isn't required to remove the scratches from the 600, and that's all sandpaper really is, and that's why we have different grades. The 320 is going to put a certain amount of scratches in the cue. The 400 is going to remove the 320 scratches. The 600 is going to remove the 400 scratches, and the 1000 is going to remove the 600 scratches. And then of course the rubbing compound is going to get rid of anything that the 1000 didn't pick up. And that's what the nice high gloss finish is all about. Because remember that we put on 10 to 12 layers. For every layer, this is where gloss comes from. For every layer that you put on is another light refraction layer. The light will have to pass through to that layer, and then it will reflect back to you, much like a diamond. And then it'll go to the next layer, refract back to you, all the way down. So theoretically it is reflecting back to you 10 to 12 times, and that's what gives you that deep, that mild deep show car finish. And that's the trick to it. Now the sandpaper, when I sand this cue, which I'll show you in just a second, when I sand the cue, again I'm going to start with 320. A lot of the time I'll just start with 400, but I'll start with 320. I'll run the machine full speed. I'll sand it under power, top, front to back, and then I'm trying, the intent here is to make the high spots of the clear coat equal to the low spots. And you'll know this because you'll start to see what's called sparkles or shiny spots, and that's simply spots that the sandpaper has not hit. As long as you have those sparkle spots there, you need to keep sanding, but you don't want to sand it with one grit only. You want to gradually take it down to the 1000, and by the time you get to the 600, all the sparkles should be gone. And the only thing that the 1000 is doing is simply taking away the scratches that the 600 put on there. Sounds kind of complicated, and it is a little bit of a learning curve, but you'll get the hang of it once you get some hands-on experience. Now, the way that I sand matters as well. I'll turn the machine on. I have the cue spinning full speed. I will sand it under power, and then once I get done with that particular grade of sandpaper at 320, I turn the machine off, and then I sand it not under power and in the opposite direction. So it would be horizontally across the cue. And what that's doing is it's crossing the scratches. Remember, under power, you're creating sort of a candy cane scratch type effect. And you turn the machine off and you sand it horizontally, and then you're initially getting rid of those candy cane scratches. But here again, you're replacing them with horizontal scratches. But when you move to your 400, it's the same thing. You're going to have the 400 taking away the 320 scratches, which 400 scratches are going to be a lot thinner. And but you do the same process with each grit of sandpaper. Under power, off power, next layer under power, off power, next layer under power, off power, and the final layer under power, off power. All of which you're going around the cue and then horizontal, around the cue, horizontal, around the cue, and horizontal. And then you begin your rubbing compounds. So let's get the camera resituated again at the cue, and again, you won't really be able to see me. You'll see my hands, and that's about it. But I'm not going to be talking because I just covered everything that we're going to be doing. If you have questions throughout the process, just back the video up and you can listen to me explain it all over again. But it's not a hard process. You do want to be cautious about the amount of pressure that you use. You don't want to be in a position to where you're keeping the sandpaper in one spot very long, especially if you have brass or silver or nickel silver rings, because the heat buildup, and sandpaper does build up heat, the heat buildup, if kept in one spot too long, is going to cause those rings to expand and contract. And when you finish the clear coat, that's where you're going to get your pops, which is the reason some people don't like the idea of using a C8 clear coat. But you know, the same thing can happen with any other type of clear coat that you use. Remember, wood is going to expand and contract at different rates from metals. Again, your brasses and silvers and aluminums and coppers and stuff like that. So just keep in mind not to keep the sandpaper in one spot very long. Now, you'll see me kind of keep it in one spot and then move to another and then move to another until I get down the cue. And that's okay as long as you're keeping it moving. Another good tip is to use full sheets of sandpaper. You don't want to use half sheets and quarter sheets trying to save 50 cents. Spend the dollar, use a whole sheet. And by doing that, it's going to eliminate the possibility of you having waves in your cue when you look down it. So remember, use a full sheet of sandpaper for the whole process. It's worth the extra dollar. Don't spend it. It's okay. So let's begin the process. When I get the sanding done, I'll take a break and I'll talk about the polishing, and then we'll get back into the polishing side of it. So give me just a minute to get the camera situated again. And again, I'm not really going to say much during the sanding process. I've already said it all just now, and I don't want to be like some people and repeat myself and repeat myself and repeat myself. All the information has already been given. I'm going to go straight to the process itself so you can focus on watching it happen. And that's important. Watch the things that are happening. Watch how I'm sanding. Watch how long the stroke length is. Watch how often I move the sandpaper from one spot to the other. Just pay attention to that part. So let's get to it. Let me get the camera resituated. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. I've got the dust collection system going, so it's kind of hard to hear me right now. I'm going to begin with the 320, then I'll move to the 400, then the 600, then the 1000, and just try to pay attention to how I'm doing it, and it'll make a lot of more sense to you. But you're not going to be able to hear me once I get over there. under power with 320, I'll turn it off and I'll do it horizontally without power. And what I do is I will use my logo here as a reference point, and I'm going to turn it 4 times. I'm going to sand it 90 degrees here, rotate 90 degrees, sand it, rotate 90 degrees, rotate 90 degrees. And this is taking out the circle scratches that you see here. Okay, now that takes care of the 320, but there's a couple things that I want to show you as far as the sparkles and what 320 did for me. Now I'll try to get this closer so you can see, but you'll notice that there are still, you can still see sparkles, like right here. See how that sparkles? That's what you're looking for. That means that you're not down that deep. But you'll also notice that the scratch pattern has changed from circular to back and forth. That's what you're looking for when it comes to polishing. And as I turn the cue, you'll still notice a couple more sparkles, or at least I hope you can in the video. So now I'll put the camera back and we will begin the next grit of sandpaper, which is going to be the 400. Now the 400, I will work with that until all the sparkles are gone. Given the fact that this particular cue doesn't have any inlays in it, the only thing that's to worry about is the ring work up front, which does have a brass ring. So if you spend a little more time in one spot on a cue with no inlays, for most part you're okay. I wouldn't want to, again, like I said earlier, I wouldn't want to spend a whole lot of time in one spot if you have inlays in the cue, especially if they're not wood. But anyway, let me get this turned back on. We're going to use 400 grit for our next. Remember, we just used 320. I'm going to use 400 now, under power, then off of power, and I will use 320 until all the sparkles are gone. Let me get this turned back on, get the air turned back on, and we'll get to it. Did there was just simply blow the dust away from the prior sanding. That way it doesn't get clogged up in the new 400 grit. notice once in a while I will pop the sandpaper, kind of like this. What I'm doing there is pretty obvious. I am making the buildup pop out and go into the dust collection system, so I keep a fresh piece of sandpaper. Now, I've gone over this cube with 400 entirely back and forth, and now I'm going to come back and hit spots that are higher than other spots. In other words, I'm going to focus on the sparkles. Okay, now what I did is I went back over one more time, focusing on the area where the sparkles were. Now if we look down the cue, I'll do a little check, and what I'm doing is I'm rotating the cue looking for either white spots or a sparkle. If you see a couple little sparkles at 400 grit, you need to go ahead and get them out while you're using the 400. The 600 is not going to get rid of them. It will over time, but it's just not worth it. Use the 400 to get all the sparkles out that you can, and this is before you go side to side. I do see some right here, and I've seen one somewhere else right there, so I'm going to go ahead and get those out of there, and then we'll do it side to side. Okay, excuse me. Now, I've got the sanding process done with the 400. It took a little longer with the 400 because I still have some sparkles in the cue that I wanted to get out of there. You notice that once I turned it off, I sanded it side to side, and I actually, if you counted it, I did it 20 times per rotation. So I sanded it back and forth 20 times, rotate 90 degrees, 20 times, rotate 90, and so forth. What that does is it helps keep the cue cylindrical. Now, what I'll do now is I will go back and do a thorough inspection of the cue to check for divots, spots that didn't get filled in with CA glue, any kind of flaws that I need to fix, because if you need to build up clear coat, now is the time to do it. So let me take care of that real quick. I'll have to use my magnifying glass, and I'll do that on screen. I'll do it live. I have a couple more spots here that I need to hit with the 400, a couple more little sparkles. And again, I'm just rotating the cue, looking for any kind of flaw at all, white spots, things like that. There's another sparkle right here I need to take care of. And there's one more sparkle here at the joint, or at the ring work, that I need to take care of as well. Other than that, it looks pretty good. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take me a quick break, grab something to drink, and then I'll come back on here. I'll just pause it, and then I'll come back on here, and we'll continue with the 600 and 1000. Okay, break's over. Time to get back to work, I guess. I think where I left off was I had done the 400 under power and then the 400 without power, back and forth. Then I went back and I checked with my monocular. I checked to see if there were any divots and white spots and areas that I hadn't hit yet, which I call sparkles. And I did find a couple of those, which I think I pointed out earlier. I went ahead and hit those. So now we're in a position to where we're ready for the 600 and the 1000. Now with those two, they're basically just meant for polishing, taking out surface scratches that the 400 left behind. Now, depending on how aggressive you are with the 400 will determine how deep the scratches are. I have not a heavy hand, about a medium light hand on the sandpaper, so the scratches aren't very deep, and the 600 does take it out for me. Yeah, you may be in a position to where you need to use 400, 600, and 800, but I can use 600 and straight to 1000. Now, again, everything is done up to the 600. So I'm going to turn the air back on, turn the lathe back on. We're going full speed, and I will use the 600, then I'll go straight to the 1000, and then I'll blow it off with an air hose. I will disconnect the camera and show you what we have before polish. So let me get started with that. now that the 1000 is done under power, you can begin to see the shine start to develop. Now I have one more step to do with the sandpaper, and that is to use the 1000 and go back and forth without power. I can do that without the air. And again, I'm going to rotate 4 times total, starting with the logo up top, so give me a reference. I'll go 10, rotate 90 degrees. 10, rotate 90 degrees. 10, and the final 90 degrees. Now, with that being done, we are ready to go to polish. First I got to blow off the sanding dust that's on there, and then we'll move on to polish. So let me get that taken care of. That I will do with the air on, full power. Okay, now that that's done, it's time to move on to polish. If you notice, I took extra time to make sure that I blew off all the sanding dust, and the polish that I'll be using, I showed you in the earlier video, is a 3M marine and finishing material. It's basically a rubbing compound that will break down the more that you use it. And what I mean by that is when you first put it on your rag, it's going to be one grit at like 5,000. And then as you use it, that grit on the rag is going to break down into a smaller grit up to about 40,000 over time. But you want to keep that moving around until you see the polish that you're after. It's going to leave a residue behind. So when you get done with that, you want to come back with the flip side of that cloth, or the non-used side of that cloth, and wipe that polish off. And then what will be left is to do a wax. So let me get that going real quick, and we'll see how it goes. Now I don't need to turn the air on for this because we're not sanding anything. So let me get my rag ready and I'll be right back. Okay, rag's ready. It's just a microfiber cloth. That's what I would recommend that you use, and fold it up in half 4 times. And the compound that I'm using again is the 3M marine compound and finishing material, but I don't keep it in this bottle. I keep it in a little mustard bottle, I guess you'd say. You can get it from Dollar General, any kind of store like that. But I will shake it up real good, and then we turn the machine back on wide open, and you can see me finish the cube. It doesn't take much. Just run one little line up toward the top of the rag. That's all you need at one time. And now lay this bottle down so it'll settle to the front. And this one little line that I'm using will cover from about here to here, almost at the A-joint, that one line. So let's turn the machine wide open and you can see it happening. Now I will do this application twice. Put another little line, go a little farther down the cue, and you notice when I put this on here, I'm starting at the very tip, and as I come forward, I'm pushing it in. So I'm kind of rolling it off on the cue. just like with the sandpaper, you don't want to leave it in one spot too long because it will build up heat. Just keep it moving around. And you do this until you develop the shine that you're looking for. It may take you a couple of applications, typically no more than 3, but I usually get by with 2. But we'll see after we get the first one done. You notice I'm going back to where I was in the beginning. That's just to kind of take the excesses on the rag and blend it in to the rest of the cube. You get a little more polishing that way. A little bit more. Now I'm at the front of the queue already. It doesn't take long to do this. And I do focus on that joint area. I want that to be nice and done. Well, I want the whole queue to be that way. I focus on the joint because that's what everybody looks at first. Now, at this point, I will use what the residue left on the rag and work my way back. Just to get an extra little bit of polish. And I think I may even be able to get by with just one coat. But we'll take a look at it and see once this is over with. I'll take the camera off of the tripod and run down the queue so you can get the close-up. Alright. Let's turn that off. And I will take the camera off the tripod and I'll run down it so you can get kind of a close-up of what we got so far. I think I can get by with just this one. Let's take a look and see. And this is where we are right now. And that's with one layer of polish. Now you can do this again. You can put a couple more layers if you want. You can get an even higher shine than what's on the cue. But I like what I've got right here. I'll go back in the other direction. I think we did okay. Now it's time for a little bit of wax and then she'll be done. I'm pretty impressed with that. Again, I think that a CA clear coat, if done properly, is one of the best methods to use. It's definitely a fast method. If you notice, look at the timestamp, it's only been 58 minutes. And, you know, this has been from start to finish. And other than wax, this is finished. So let me put this back into the tripod and we'll begin to do some wax for you. Now the wax, it's pretty simple, it's just wax. Yeah, I put 2 coats on there and then I let it sit. I'm not going to make you suffer through that. I'll put 2 coats on it and let it sit, and then I'll let it sit for about 10 minutes and then wipe it back off. But I will give you a couple tips on the wax. There is a specific kind of wax that I use. It's called Gold Class Carnuba wax. Give me a second, I'll show you the bottle. Okay, this is the one that I use. It's Maguires Gold Class Carnuba Plus, and this will last me almost a year actually. And I'll put that on with the machine turning wide open, and I will use the supplied pad that comes in the can. I put 1 coat on and rub it in really well, because that has a little bit of polishing properties with it as well. Once I get that 1 coat on, I'll let the cue spin at about half the speed until it dries, basically till all the binder has evaporated. Once the wax is dried, which is about 10 to 12 minutes, I'll come back with a clean microfiber cloth and wipe that wax off, and then I'll put 1 more layer. Now what I will do is I'm going to pause it and I'll go ahead and put a layer on there. Actually, I'll put the first layer on while we're live, and then I'll pause it and do the second layer, and then I'll come back for the final layer and show you me taking it off. So give me just a second, get the machine turned back on, and I'll put a layer on. Now, again, when I put the layer on, I am using the supplied pad that comes with it, and I'm using it with the machine wide open. Again, this has a little bit of polishing property to it, so rub it in the first coat really well, and you're still giving it an extra level of polish there, but make sure you rub it in really well. And after you feel like you have rubbed it in pretty well, come back down there with an even coat. Alright, and that's that. I'll let that sit there and spin at about half speed until it cures, or dries rather, and then I'll wipe it off and put another coat on. Now, I'm not going to sit there and make you, like I said earlier, I'm not going to sit there and make you suffer through that. I'll go ahead and put the other coat on because you've already seen me put the first coat on, and then I will come back to take off the wax. I'll just pause it until I come back. Okay, I'm back. I went ahead that first coat and applied that, let it dry, and I took it off. I put the second coat of wax on, and now it's dry, and I'm going to go ahead and show that being taken off, and then I'll run down the queue one more time with the camera in my hand. You'll know the wax is ready when it starts to flake off like you see here. If it is not flaking off in the air like that, the wax isn't ready. Alright, now I'll turn the machine off. And I'll go ahead and I'll just run up and down the queue just to make sure I got all the wax rubbed off. And once I do that, I will take the camera and show you what we got. I think it turned out really well. Okay. Now, I'll take the camera out, and I'll go up and down the queue once or twice and let you see what we got here. I think this turned out very well for a CA clear coat. It's the only clear coat that I will use now, and according to the timestamp minus the break, it only took about 1 hour and 15 minutes from start to finish, and it is ready to go into a case if I had the bumper on it, which will come next. I think it turned out very well. If you have any questions about this, how I do things, if I missed anything, please write it in the comments. I'll be more than happy to explain anything that I haven't already explained. Like and share and subscribe to this channel, please. The more you subscribe and like and comment, the more it is shown across YouTube, and that really helps us grow. I appreciate it very much. Me and my partner Ed with EAPQs will be doing more videos in the very near future with different aspects of queue construction. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it was helpful. If it was, please leave me a comment. Thanks, guys.